to the first week of Textures in Ceramics. Before we even begin, I'd like to introduce you to this very brief conversation on how to prepare for the course and what to expect. While, of course, you have some expectations, I have my own expectations of how I'd like to see a really good student. And the main reason why I'd like to mention that is that the results that you're going to get from this course really depend on your attitude. I know that a lot of people know a lot of information. You might have learned something from somewhere else that you know already, and I might say something similar, or I might say something entirely different. Depending on your attitude, you might be like, oh, I already know all of this, or oh, this is total bullshit. I'm not going to listen to Maria. I invite you to be curious and perceptive. This will help a lot with how you perceive the information and how much of this information you can use later in your life and in your career in ceramics. I treat this course more as a library of ideas from what you can draw things that suit you. You wouldn't have to repeat every single technique for this course. It's up to you what calls you, what kind of materials you have access to. You pick. I do think that it's a very good idea to be exposed to a lot of different techniques and a lot of different ideas, because by being exposed to them, you might find the one that resonates the most with you. So everything I'm going to mention, just pick the ones that hit you the best and try them first, especially if you haven't tried it before. Otherwise, treat this course as a library of ideas, library of inspiration, and kind of even a pointer toward which direction you like to go next in your artistic practice. It's up to you how much you're going to make. You know how many firings you can get done quickly. I do recommend getting at least a couple of interesting new ideas into each firing so that your testing and your experimentation practice keeps growing and gets more and more interesting. So test, experiment, get creative. It's all up to you. And here's the whole course to help you with that. Of course, ask questions. If you have any question, just feel free to drop a comment and ask the question. And also engage in the discussions. If you see some kind of question that you would like to answer, feel free to answer that. But also, if you purchase the full or the VIP plan, let's join the Zoom calls and let's talk about our materials, our techniques, and everything that we can talk wherever about. There's no prerequisites, as I mentioned in the videos above. However, it's nice to have a certain equipment list. And a lot of this list you might already have if you have done ceramics before. But I decided just to write it out so that you know what are the basic things you would benefit from. We're going to crush some materials in this course. So mortar and pestle or hammer or something else that you can use to crush rocks or any other materials. I use quart containers for materials and for glazes. However, if you have any other types of containers that you prefer, whatever, I don't care about which containers you put your stuff in. I like pretty containers, and even quart containers do not fit my, aesthetics requirements, unfortunately. So I might have to switch to something more sustainable and prettier at some point. We might need scales and weights, especially if you're taking the second part of the course, if you're going to be working with glazes. If you're only taking the first part, you might not need the scales or weights, but they're still beneficial just so that you know how much you're measuring and what you're measuring. I have two sets of weights. One is, they're both kitchen weights. The first one is bigger and less exact. I think it goes to 0.001 or 0.01 gram up to like 10 kilos or something, or maybe more, maybe 15. So it's kind of like both directions. I cannot recommend any specific one. However, my teacher, Matt Katz, recommended the one that you see on the screen, a house. It is expensive, but it's supposedly really good. I got mine for like $30 or whatever, the cheapest scale I could possibly find. And the second scale I have is a tiny one. It's for measuring oxides or like really, really small quantities of things. I suspect it's some kind of a drug scale because it had like tiny spoon. That tiny spoon is also useful. So if you have the tiny spoon or spatula, it's also good for measuring materials, for putting them into the containers and onto your object. While everything else is optional, protective gear is a must-have. If you do not have something from this list, go ahead and buy it. We do need protective glasses. We need the respirator, ideally a P100 rated respirator. We need gloves, latex gloves or something like that. And we need an apron, basically to protect ourselves from any dust and any dry materials that we're going to be handling. I like to use the immersion blender for making slips, for mixing glazes as well. So if you have one, it's very nice for small quantities of things. If you suspect that you're going to mix a huge bucket of glaze, of course, you'd benefit from a bigger mixer too, from a drill with a little like paint mixer on the end. We're going to be using black underglaze pencil, or if you have a brush with underglazes, we're just going to use it to write down different things on the backside of the styles. We'll for sure need something to use to like put the materials from the container into the container, whether it's glaze recipe or something else. So any kind of metal stainless steel spoon or spoonula, all of these are good. There's no specific requirement to which one you have to get. Just get something to put it in and out. You might want a test sieve, like little mesh cup sieve that you can see on the right here. So you might want to use that. I actually personally do not use them as often as I should, even for glaze testing, for glaze mixing. However, it's nice to have one to sieve out bigger pieces and bigger chunks. I recommend 60 or 80 mesh, however, it's a personal choice. And just some generic ceramic tools that you're using every day, like a ruler, needle tool, X-Acto knife, or like regular wooden knife, Sharpies, ribs, metal rib, plastic rib, whatever ribs you're using, various brushes and sponges. All of this will be useful. However, everything is optional. You can just use your fingers. So this is the recommended equipment list. Just let me know if you have any questions about some specific materials you'd like to buy or some specific equipment. I can send you some links and some recommendations. I just normally buy a random one and go with it. Here we go. Welcome to the course again, and let's keep going to the first lecture.